Hi there, and welcome to the Callosum interview series, Beyond Revenue, Bringing Purpose to Brand. This is where conversations grounded in purpose give insights to the outdoor industry. Thanks for joining us today. So welcome, Eliza. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me. We've been talking about doing this for a while and we finally made it happen.
We sure have. Yes, Eliza and I were introduced by a colleague earlier in 2022, and sometimes life happens. So yes, it's exciting to have you. We're in the fall of 2022 now. So Eliza, you are the founder of Green Buoy Consulting, which is a sustainability consultancy that provides ESG. So ESG is environmental, social, and governance consulting, strategy, and B Corp certification to high growth companies. You have a master's in sustainability from Harvard Extension School and a BA in business administration from Boston University. You grew up in the Pacific Northwest and now live in New York City. So there's lots of terms in there that I'd love to unpack for those that are not familiar with it. I always like to, not make presumptions around terminology so that our listeners aren't running around with their dictionary. so first to start out, tell me how do you define purpose in your own words? There's lots of definitions.
I define purpose as being as close to your values as possible. I think companies that really find their purpose and do well are those that are very values driven. And if your purpose comes from that, then you can start to do great things.
Mm-hmm. Great. Perfect. Yes. I always think of who we are, our values, start there.
Yes.
What are we committed to creating in the world? And through that, in the future, where do we want to get? And so today, what do we do? So vision backs into mission.
Yes. I like adding the vision and mission.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, it's it keeps evolving. So in the beginning, about values was fine. And then it became, well, what are you up to? Is the vision? What are you going to do today to get there? But it seems to, the evolution of creation of purpose is because we need to step beyond ourselves. And as our society has gotten so riddled with catastrophes and challenges that seem unsurmountable, how do we as an individual help to take action and feel confident that we are making a difference? And I believe that's why purpose is moving beyond the trend that we have today. So you've been at Green Buoy for 4 years, and I would say I define it as the green industry for a decade. Tell me about sort of any pivotal moments that you see in the industry in your past decade, and maybe why do you believe these changes are occurring?
So the changes that I'm seeing, so I'm working mostly with smaller companies, so less than 2,000 employees, thinking about environmental and social strategies. And I think a decade ago, if you were not selling a consumer goods product, or you weren't selling food or baby kind of adjacent things, you could kind of ignore sustainability because your customers didn't care about it. And now there's been this shift where employees care about it and are bringing it to work, where vendors and suppliers are asking their sort of upstream and downstream people about it. It's just become a conversation on so many different levels that kind of every place these companies turn, they're seeing different sustainability stuff. They're seeing environmental strategies in play, and they want to be a part of it and they can't ignore it. So I think that is part of the growth, and it's been exciting to kind of see that new challenge that it presents to companies to kind of talk about it with all these different people.
Mm-hmm. So not only is your staff interested and asking, so are your consumers interested and demanding.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. I think the consumer angle has always been there and it continues to grow. But I think if you, like, a lot of my clients are B2B, like before, if you were just selling to another business, you didn't have to talk about it because it wasn't a business thing. But now it's something that clients are putting in RFPs. People want to know
Mm.
are the values that we have as a company consistent with those that we're working with? So it's just become a broader conversation, which I think is really exciting.
I have a form on my website for an affiliate to apply. So to be part of our remote team. And someone commented to me that, wow, you have value, you're asking our values and you're asking what our individual purpose is. And I said, well, yes, to me, it is far more important or primarily important that we align in terms of value, culture, and energy prior to knowing that you have the skill set. And this individual was happy to see that because it made them think about, is this the right fit for me? So when we look at the organizations that we choose to work with, that's now part of the conversation.
That's so cool. Yeah, I think more and more companies are kind of thinking in that way and are seeing the benefits from having those conversations. Like it just sets up your partnership in such a different way that becomes ultimately beneficial for both parties, that they're like, oh, we can ask these questions and talk about this and learn from each other. Like it just becomes such a different angle instead of just sort of quid pro quo, like traditional business.
Right.
Kind of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm so curious to know, like, whomever collects the data of what are the percentages of organizations out there. And I mean, I guess we can look at how many B Corps are there in relation to total population. Would you happen to know that statistic? It's a loaded question.
No, I think now there's about 4,000, over 4,000, and 2 or 3 years ago that it was under like 2,600, somewhere in that range. So it has just like the growth of companies that are doing that has been enormous. Like it's, 50% increases. And so the statistics are proving that more and more people are interested in this. And
yes, and we know that statistically that organizations that are purpose-driven, the growth acceleration, the last statistic I have is that they grow at 175% faster when they integrate purpose across the board through the organization and lead with that story.
170%. Wow, I didn't know that one. I have heard that B Corps grow faster. I don't know what the statistic is, but that 170%, that's a hard number to ignore.
Yeah, and it's from Cantor. I'm actually looking for the kind of the next update on that. But yeah. So I've already dove in. Can you tell us what is a B Corp? And then from your personal perspective, how did you come to do this work? At what point? What's sort of the impetus for your passion?
Yeah, so a B Corp is a certification that's given by a group called B Lab. And to become certified as a B Corp, you have to legally change your business designation from an LLC, S Corp, whatever legal entity, to a benefit corporation. That's one of the things that you have to do. And then you have to fill out, usually it's about 200 questions, this assessment that's online, and it looks at your business. It looks at workers, governance, customers, environment, and community. And if you answer all those questions and you submit and you meet with B Lab and you come out of it with a score of 80 or above, and you get certified by B Lab, then you can become a B Corp. So it's really looking at all these different angles of business. How are you treating your suppliers? What employee benefits do you offer? What environmental benefits do you offer? So that's B Corp. I think it's been around for about 15 years. Don't quote me on that, but like Patagonia, Ben and Jerry's, Allbirds, there's a lot of, larger kind of companies that we all know that have the B Corp, the B Corp designation.
And I know I have heard you say in somewhere else, I was doing my research, that more and more companies are doing this earlier. So not waiting until they are a large organization, but doing it earlier. Are you finding that?
Yes, definitely. B Corp has introduced something that's called a pending B Corp. So if you have less than a year in business, you can apply for this pending. And the process is the same. You have to fill out the application, but it's more of, we're filling out this application and then you're given a year to kind of actually implement and prove those changes that you're talking about. So I think as this sort of purpose movement continues and as more and more entrepreneurs are coming, they're in a mindset of, we want to be building our business to these standards. Like, we're trying to figure out how to scale with purpose, with all of these things that we're interested in.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I know that the organization itself, B Lab, is backlogged because they now have all these organizations that are, I mean, that's what I am, please engage earlier, integrate it into your service, into your packaging, into your HR. The earlier, the better, because then you already have it. However, I also know there are some big decisions that sort of you need to make along the way, which maybe you might be in that pending status because you haven't had the need to make big decisions yet. So that's interesting to see that they seem to be evolving.
Yeah, I think it's the sort of good and bad answer is that it totally depends on the company. Like, every company is different. Some companies really want to start from the beginning. Other companies want to wait until they've hired some people. The other thing to know about B Corp and B Lab, anybody can fill out that assessment for free. So any company can go and start it. And even if they don't want to become a B Corp, but they're curious of like, what do good employee practices look like? Or how do I do these different types of things? You can use the assessment to still answer those questions and think about them, which I think is really cool.
Right. I have suggested that perhaps you take a section per quarter or something, work your way into it so that it can be part of your strategic plan, because many won't even go do it because then they're like, oh, well, if I can't complete it, or if it's too overwhelming, then it just becomes a to-do, one more to do. But if you integrate it in terms of professional development and a strategic plan, it can be, interesting way to engage it. So how did you tell me, your life story? How did you your passion of sustainability and, made a big change from Washington State to New York State? What's the story behind that? That's sort of your why.
Yeah. So my parents are big environmentalists. My grandparents were. It was just a part of the way that we grew up, thinking about the planet, and always like, my first lesson about the stock market was you can put money in companies that are doing good things. And when my parents, I remember my dad complaining about Nike shoes in like 1994 when they were having like supply chain problems, like stuff that nobody was really talking about then, but in Washington that, we recycled and all that kind of stuff. So I was always interested and just sort of thought that's how businesses were run. And then I went to study business in Boston, and nobody
found out that's not true.
Nobody.
Right. Cool.
Nobody was talking about, environmental stuff. So in school, someone from Walmart came and spoke about their supply chain and like environmental stuff. And I was like, oh, you can do this like for business, like you can integrate it. So that was sort of the beginning of thinking about it and continuing.
Yeah. Ahead of the curve, far ahead of the curve. And so I think grow up like that.
Yeah. I think it's something that I kind of take for granted, but now, when I think about that and get that question, it's like, oh yeah, it was like set up to do this and become that way. And then I did the Harvard Extension School. They have a master's degree in sustainability, and all the case studies in, 2014, 2015 were Unilever and Pepsi, because big businesses, that was the sort of corporate social responsibility era. And there was no example of a smaller company. And I just kept thinking like, oh, who's doing strategy work for those smaller companies, for the non kind of Unilevers of the world. Yeah.
Right. That's a little bit of, can you see yourself so that you can step into it? And often when folks ask who are Callosum clients, I say, well, okay, so Cotopaxi, Patagonia, we are them earlier. So they are the ones doing the work now with impact already worked into it. Wait a few years and you'll see them in the news, because they are now at the stage where it's making a difference. So great. Thanks for rallying earlier in the brand cycle. I love it. We are like-minded.
Yes.
So I'm curious to know, you're an entrepreneur yourself.
Mm.
What's your biggest challenge today?
I think something I've been thinking about the past kind of 6 months that I'm trying to figure out how to work with clients in a way that keeps moving things faster while also understanding that for me, I'm usually sixth, seventh, eighth on someone's priority list. So a
Right.
client, they're a CMO,
Sure.
they're a CEO, or they're the one ESG person at their company.
Mhm.
So if I'm helping them with a carbon footprint, for example, or different things, how do we keep that moving ahead? And how do I make their lives easier while also kind of pushing them a little bit out of their comfort zone, like figuring out what that kind
Mhm.
of balance, what that balance is.
Right. I understand that. I find that I sometimes about, a few days out of our next appointment will do little pings. How's this going? Have you completed this?
Yes.
And, everyone works differently in terms of what can, are you on the same software platforms in order to do touch points and check-ins,
Mhm.
but to also, typically a work session ends with a whole bunch of ideas and a big to-do list.
Yes.
And how do you get from there to that next meeting? Yes, with the team. I agree in terms of taking things off their plate, but at the same time, often they need to do the heavy lifting because it's
Yes.
internal. Mhm.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. And
as an external company, like how do you engage but make sure that it moves forward? Mhm.
I think that's especially true with a growth stage business, like a company that is just usually hiring a ton of people and they're trying to do all these different things. Some of them are planning for IPOs or they're in that super, super heavy growth mindset. How do you fit different ESG stuff into that
Mhm.
and show the value of tying those things together?
Right. Right. Yeah. I don't have an answer, but that's okay. I'm like, can I give an answer? No, no, but I think that is always a challenge. And so, how do you look at how they are moving? Because what is the in priority for the day? When I look at my week, I say,
Yeah.
what are the three levers that will move the business forward? And then per day, what are the maybe perhaps three tasks per day that will move the business forward towards
Yes.
towards that end of the week. So how do you move from priority 6 or 7 or couple it with something that is higher? I think that is really a magic piece, is to integrate and really show that this is going to make that quadruple bottom line hit, instead of just having, I think of moving from transition to transformation,
Yeah.
of really it's getting deeper beyond
Mhm.
the to-do list that says I have to check this, but why do I have to check this box?
Right.
How is
Yeah.
it, how is it going to help me? And that takes longer because we're usually ping-ponging through the day or hopping through Zoom meetings or whatever that might
Yes.
be.
Mhm.
So I know I try to look at, whenever I assign a task, it has a piece of why in the description. Here's why a reminder, here's why we're doing this.
Yeah. And what goal it rolls up to. That it's
Mhm.
not just we're doing this to do it or doing this to avoid doing something
Yeah, right.
else.
Well, and sometimes it's fun work and sometimes it's not fun
Yeah.
work. So that is also
Mhm.
the perspective of the client or the business owner, of
Yeah.
what is interesting to me. Am I a curious person or am I a taskmaster? And so that is also a nuance of being a business owner working with clients, to say how do I serve them best based on their
Yeah.
personality or based
Mhm.
on the directive of their team. Yeah, great. So if you're thinking about investigating, doing the assessment,
Mhm.
when is a good time to begin?
Um, I think what I recommend companies do is that they look at what the benefit they're hoping to get out of it. So some clients I have are doing it to hire the right people. Some people want to do it for hiring purposes. Some people want to do it to engage with their supply chain on a different level. Some people want to do it for customers. for the packaging. So figuring out kind of what that reason, the kind of extra reason to do it. And then most companies are, I think, are at a tipping point where they're just losing employees, or they're just getting so many questions from suppliers, and they'll decide, okay, we really need to do this. I think for companies that are thinking about it and don't have a timeline, I think your suggestion of like 1 quarter at a time. Like I see and talk to so many businesses where we talk and they're like, great, I'm going to start. And then 6 months, and then it doesn't. Whereas the people that I talk to that even do 2 or 3 questions a week, by the end of the year, they're further than those companies that haven't, that keep kind of putting it off, because it is overwhelming. It is a lot of work. I don't want to undersell the work part, but I think if you can map out a timeline and really think about, okay, what are we doing this for? And how to kind of rally your team. So much of that is culture based too. How does your company think about hitting other milestones or hitting other things? If you look at B Corp the same way, I think you'll be successful.
Okay. So there's many reasons to do it. If you can choose, what are your top 3 reasons to keep that in mind? I love the idea of 2 questions a week. So I work in time blocks. I schedule out in my week in time blocks. And so for me, I have, like, for example, Friday mornings is learning. And I save in my CRM, read this, watch this, listen to this. And then, Friday morning I go, okay, what do I feel like learning today? So that keeps you relevant. It helps you with resources.
I love that.
Often it develops like something to talk about, conversation, so current events, fantastic. But maybe there can be a time block for the assessment and says, we're going to come together. It would be great if you're an entrepreneurial business, to come together and do 2 questions a week. So to confirm, you can go in, this is a save your application.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So you can, and no one's ticking it to say, oh, they're going so slowly.
No.
Okay.
And you can start anywhere. The first section is governance, which I think governance is very interesting, but that's just me. Nobody, I think, looks at that and is like, great, awesome.
So you can hop around.
You can start with workers. You can start with community.
Okay. Oh, that's great. So maybe you start on your section that you're most committed to.
Yes. Or what you're most interested in.
Okay. And is there support for this when you're doing this from the B Lab end, or are you on your own?
There's definitely a lot of articles. They have a really great knowledge base platform where it will tell you kind of, if I'm in this situation, I should do this, or if I'm a subsidiary, or if I have this many employees, or I'm not sure what my industry is. And then within the application, in each question, there's a little learn more button on the left. So if you are reading, what is a living wage? I don't know. Click on the learn more and it will tell you how to calculate it. It will tell you what to do and what those different terms mean. Back to this, hodgepodge of just alphabet soup that this industry has created for itself.
Yes.
That I think is a helpful tool within the assessment.
Right. And so I'd be remiss to not offer, it's like, so can you tell me, who is your ideal client? Like if somebody doesn't want to go it alone and they want to work with you at Green Buoy, where do they need to be, or sort of what's your span of clientele?
It's sort of half pending bees. I think that has become just a bigger market of people that want to build their business to that standard and want help in that arena. And there's no one industry. It kind of varies across industry, but I think my client has started themselves and are just like, I need to be moving faster.
Want some accountability?
Yeah, I think accountability is 80%. Or if you're in a place of like, we're at 65 points and we just need help.
Okay.
Kind of
bring it over the finish line.
Bring it over.
Getting unstuck.
Yeah, but I think accountability is a huge piece of it. And I now have clients that are just strategy clients that also see the benefit of kind of bringing in B Corp after they've done some of those things. So there's options of kind of building your strategy using B Corp as a foundation, or if you have a strategy in place and are putting that, to have B Corp as kind of a nice icing
Yeah.
on the cake.
Wonderful. Awesome. If you could share a tip with a founder or leadership team, what would it be around sustainability B Corp?
Something I've been thinking about these past couple of weeks is that executive buy-in needs to be there. Like, if you're going to start an ESG strategy, if you're going to think about B Corp, it has to come from the top, because employees will look to their leadership team and say, is this something we can spend time on? Is this something we can do? And the companies that are most successful is where it comes from the top down. It might not be the CEO's idea. I think a lot of times it's employees that are pushing them, but the CEO, the leadership team is saying, yes, great, go for it. And they're giving their full support.
How do you feel about, or how would I go about if I am an employee and I want to bring it to the attention of my team if I don't see it within my organization?
So I think, again, you can look at other people in your industry that are doing it maybe and say, this is this. Listen for what the CEO talks about during town halls or open things. Is he talking about hiring? Is your CEO talking about customer retention? Is she talking about supply chain? There's different angles of B Corp that you can say, you were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. This could really help. And now there's just so many statistics, the purpose statistic that you shared, all these other things that show that it really benefits your business. So there's a lot of ways to make a case.
Great. So let's take a shift to you. If you could read the future, where do you see your business in 20 years?
Oh, 20 years.
I know. Well, you could sort of pick, but that seems far enough out. So 10 years isn't that long, but 20 years.
20. Yeah. I have a joke that I think this is true a little bit, but like, I would love to be put out of business. Like, I would just love for every business to have an ESG strategy that's working well, and that there's no, we're not thinking about net zero and those things are in place. And then it's just like maintenance and talking about the amazing technology we found to remove carbon all these different, that we saved the world and it worked. So that's my 20-year hope.
That's fantastic. That tells me about just your passion for this, is that someone that says, I want to put myself out of business shows that they're committed to the impact. And that's fantastic. And how about you, inside of that, you personally? So, one of my favorite questions, and perhaps you've heard it from our colleague, Merritt Minnemeyer, is, who are you becoming?
Oh, I got chills at getting asked that question. I think that part of the fun and kind of hard part of being an entrepreneur is really being true to yourself. I think for me, before, I had kind of a work self and then a different self. So being able to merge those into one and not being afraid to talk about, this is how I like to work and this is the type of client, and being very forthcoming with both of those. So that's,
you get to show up as you everywhere. That's
which is new to me and is exciting. So
it is. I think it's fairly new to the world, and I used to, back in my, I've now owned a business 17 years, longer than I worked corporately, 16 years.
Wow.
And I used to see a lot. People would like put on their work uniform and don't talk about home life, and don't, share emotions, and that's really become unsustainable in terms of health and in terms of burnout. And so it is now, we are dispelling the stigmatisms around mental health and around the boundaries around work. And I think, it sounds like you communicate openly as I do, in terms of making sure that, it's the way we work is healthy, and that we're passionate about it, and really what we're up to, like, what are we up to in life? And so it's I knew when I met you that this is why the introduction was made,
Yes.
in terms of just being committed to making a difference in the world and using our own passion to be a cheerleader for B Corp so that our world improves, for
Yes.
ourselves and for our generations to come. So thank you for being so passionate about sustainability in B Corps.
Yeah, thank you for setting the example.
Of course. So let's wrap it up with my rapid fire questions. So Eliza does not know what these are. These are just off the cuff. So what was your last trip in the outdoors, or when did you last go outside and what were you doing? So I will preface that I realize you live in New York City and outdoors is everywhere. The moment we step outside, we are in the outdoors.
So it's good that we are talking now. I spent the last week of August on the west coast of Vancouver Island. That's where I go with my family.
Beautiful.
Every summer, yeah. So I am the first to admit I am not the most outdoors person, but I do like being there and getting to just hike and be in nature and fish and be on the water. So that was my last.
Taking in the views. I hear it's beautiful. I have not
is.
yet been, but it's beautiful. Awesome. And how about top of mind nonprofit that you'd like to give a shout out to?
I can share that my 1% for the Planet donation goes to the Clayoquot Wilderness Fund, also based on the west coast of Vancouver Island. So that's who I support with my 1%.
Will you say it again for me?
Yeah, the Clayoquot. Yeah, CLAYQUOT.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'll have to look that up. I'll add it to the show notes. I'm not familiar with that. I
Yeah.
love learning about new ones. Wonderful.
Yeah.
And how about a favorite podcast or book?
Have you read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow?
No.
Okay, I read that on vacation as well.
Okay.
And it's excellent. I read a lot, like multiple books a month. And that was my favorite book of this year, probably.
What's it about?
It is about, this is going to make you laugh. It's about 3 friends that start a company. But it's a novel and it is just about friendship and growth and sort of discovering how people operate and how to grow a business.
Right up my alley.
That was the lens that I looked at it from, like that kind of business owner lens, but I would definitely recommend it.
Well, that's neat. And I love fiction because I'm a neuroscience nerd and the brain likes to make connections.
Yes.
So when we step out of work, particularly on vacation, and you're reading something fiction, the brain is going to automatically connect it to our work. And likely you finish or come home having solved something in your work life. And particularly with a story of entrepreneurship and friendship. That sounds right up my alley. I will definitely look into that.
Oh, that's interesting. Huh. I didn't think about it that way, but you're right. Yeah.
The brain is a meaning-making machine and it loves puzzles.
Oh. Yeah, I would definitely, the book is excellent. Excellent.
Wonderful. Well, that's it. So finally, how can our audience find you?
So you can find me at my website, greenbuoyconsulting.com. I am also on LinkedIn a lot. So if you're a LinkedIn person, please just search my name and you'll find me, and then we can chat on LinkedIn.
I always give a shout out. LinkedIn is a powerful, powerful tool in terms of knowledge and business connections. And so, yes, great.
Yes, definitely.
Eliza, lovely as always. So great to catch up. It's been a bit. Thanks for joining me on the show, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us for today's conversation of Beyond Revenue, Bringing Purpose to Brand. We hope to see you again in future episodes. And in the meantime, please be in touch with us on all the usual marketing channels. You can find us on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and of course on our website at gocallosum.com. We sure hope you got outside today.